Hello and welcome to Men at the Movies, the YouTube channel. My name is Paul McDonald, and today we're talking about the movie Interstellar, which Andrew Winch and I discussed on the podcast in full. We talked about the scene very briefly, and I wanted to dive a little deeper into it. So the setting for this scene is Cooper and Brand, Matthew McConaughey's character and Anne Hathaway's character, come back from their first adventure, their first attempt to find a viable planet, a sustainable planet for life. And it was a waste because there was nothing there. It was the water planet with the tidal waves. And by the time they make it back, 23 years have passed on Earth.
Hello, Rob?
I've waited years. How many years? By now it must be.
It's 23 years, 4 months, 8 days.
Brand has this amazing line that we experience so many times when we enter into new phases, when we enter into especially families, marriages, and children.
But I was prepared. I knew the theory. Reality's different.
I thought I was prepared. I knew the theory. Reality is different. And so many times we make decisions, we engage in life thinking we know what's going to happen, we know what to expect, we know how to parent the children, just like my brother always said he was a great dad before he had children. And that idea that we're good, we know how to do it, but actually doing it is completely different. That's the first aspect. That's the first point of this. The power of this clip is so many times we do that, where we make these decisions, we get into it and find ourselves over our head. And what do we do with that? How do we respond? And that's the testing of our faith. It's pretty easy to have faith and to trust God when everything's up and to the right, where everything's going well, the kids are behaving, your marriage is great, your job is flourishing, everything's go. But when somebody gets sick, when somebody dies, when you wake up and you don't recognize the person sleeping next to you because they've changed, you've changed, and you just feel so separate. You thought you were prepared. You thought you knew the theory, but reality is completely different.
We've got years of messages.
And we see what happens, and we see our response, the grief and the loss of 23 years is Cooper sits down and watches all these messages. There's no doubt that Cooper loves his kids. In fact, he left the planet. He left them so that he could somehow find a way to help them survive. I feel that way about my kids with the divorce. It's been also well over a decade. And there's this sense of this grief and this pain of things that can never be fixed, of never be changed, of things that you missed. And it might be breakfast, it might be dinners, it might just be sitting around the house, it might be nothing very big. But sometimes the boring parts are the best.
The one. Her name's Lois. It's her right there. Murphy stole Grandpa's car. She crashed it. She's okay though. Hey, Dad. Look at this. Your grandpa. His name's Jesse. I kind of wanted to call him Coop, but Lois says, maybe next time. McDonald says he's already earned the great part, so we just leave it at that. Shoulder.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Say bye-bye, Grandpa.
We've all felt that to some degree, which I think is why that scene connects so deeply with us. At least that's why it connects deeply with me. Is because I know that feeling, I know that pain, that my decisions caused me this grief. He sees his son hurting as he's experienced both the loss of his son, of Jesse, and his grandfather, Cooper's father-in-law.
We buried him out in the back 40 next to Mom and Jesse, which is where we would have buried you if you'd ever come back. Murph was there at the funeral, and we don't see her that much, but she came for that. You aren't listening to this, I know that. all these messages are just drifting out there in the darkness. Lois says that I have to let you go, and so I guess I'm letting you go. I don't know, wherever you are, Dad.
And it's almost like, oh, just when it can't get any worse, when he hears his son say, I just need to give up on you, then his daughter pops on, his daughter whose face he's been craving to see. And Matthew McConaughey just does such a fantastic job acting in this moment. But she doesn't have words of comfort. She has just more arrows to dig into his heart, dig into his soul.
I never made one of these when you were still responding because I was so mad at you for leaving. And then when you went quiet, it seemed like I should live with that decision, and I have. But today's my birthday. And it's a special one because you told me you once told me that when you came back, we might be the same age. And today I'm the age you were when you left. So it would be a real good time for you to come back.
And it's hard because we know the father's heart because we see Cooper's story. But as children, it's sometimes easy to not see the father's heart. It's easy when we're here wondering where God is, just like those children, to say, well, where are you? Why am I going through this? And there's some verses. I actually pulled verses for today in Hebrews 7, and I'm using the Living Translation for all of these verses. So, have you forgotten the encouraging words God spoke to you as his children? He writes in chapter 12. My child, don't make light of the Lord's discipline, and don't give up when he corrects you, for the Lord disciplines those he loves, and he punishes each one he accepts as his child. As you endure this divine discipline, remember that God is treating you as his own children. Who ever heard of a child who is never disciplined by its father? If God doesn't discipline you as he does all of his children, it means you are illegitimate and not really his child at all. And since we respected our earthly fathers who disciplined us, shouldn't we submit even more to the discipline of the Father of our spirits and live forever? For our earthly fathers disciplined us for a few years, doing the best they knew how. But God's discipline is always good for us, so that we might share in his holiness. No discipline is enjoyable while it is happening. It's painful, but afterward there will be a peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in this way. Discipline becomes easier to take. Pain, trials, sorrow, grief, regret become easier to take when we understand the heart of the Father. And we understand that it's for us. And sometimes we don't want it. At that moment, Coop's making a decision. He says, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get me back to my kids the quickest, because he can't take it anymore. He's opting out. But there's other promises. In James, he writes, Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you'll be perfect and complete, needing nothing. And then he talks about something else, like he gets distracted, kind of like he's got ADHD, and then comes back and says, but because God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. Afterward, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. So there is something on the other end. There is a crown of life on the other end of it. Peter writes something very similar. Dear friends, don't be surprised at the fiery troubles you are going through, as if something strange were happening to you. Instead, be glad, for these trials make you partners with Christ in his suffering, so that you will have the wonderful joy of seeing his glory when it is revealed to all the world. And that idea of seeing his glory revealed, because there's stuff that I've prayed for and I don't see. You know, I know friends who prayed for healing only to see their wives die. I have friends whose kids died in car wrecks, and there's pain, and there's sorrow, and there's grief, and there's a time that you just don't want to do it anymore, where you want to tap out. And sometimes when we're in these moments of trials and grief and sorrow that we see Coop in this scene, we do, and we're going to see him, and we talk more about this on the podcast. He takes the fight in his own hands, basically. He's like, he changes, and not really in a good way. But the words from the Elevation worship song, Authority, says, "My fight is not my own. Its end is in your hands. I worship you because I know all things must bow to your command." And then the bridge, "Will heaven not prevail and strongholds not be moved? Will spirits not be silenced and cower at his rule? For if my God is for me, then what have I to fear? And I will not deny him the glory that is his." And that line stuck out for me. I will not deny him the glory that is his. Because our lives are revealing God's glory. That verse I didn't look up. I don't know where that is, but I remember that we are revealing God's glory through the lives that we live. If we can stick it out, if we can go through it. And I love the story of Lazarus. It's so deep on so many levels. But the piece I'm grasping today is from John 11 and verse 4. He says, when Jesus heard about it, he said, "Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God, so that the Son of God will receive glory from this." Martha and Mary and Lazarus were praying for healing. They prayed for Lazarus to be healed, for him not to die. But he had to die for the glory of God, so that Jesus would receive glory from this, because Lazarus can't come back from the dead if he never dies. And many times I don't want that. I don't want to go through that grief, that painful experience. I don't want to sit there like Coop, seeing the things that are just arrows and knife wounds into my heart. And so to wrap this up, this scene of why it hits is because we've all gone through this. We've all experienced some similar pain. We all have an echo of this situation. Granted, most of us probably haven't gotten on a spaceship, flown through a black hole, and lost 23 years of life. But we all have painful experiences in our past that have hurt the people that we love the most, have hurt ourselves. And sometimes there's just nothing we could have done about it. And the pain is there. But I think the way that we get through that is later in John 11, when Jesus wept. And we know that we're not alone in it. And as we see in the movie, Cooper's alone, and his fight is his. He takes the fight in his own hands. And so our challenge becomes, am I going to deny God the glory so that I don't have to go through the pain? And that was what Jesus decided not to do. He could have easily not died. He could have easily not gone to the cross. There has to be heat and hammering if you want to make something beautiful, something strong, something lasting. I love the idea of the blacksmith. But in order to make it, the iron has to be hammered and it has to be heated up. And I can't speak for the iron. I don't know how that feels, but I know how my life feels. And I don't like the heating. I don't like the hammering. There's times I want to opt out and just be a puddle of melted iron, or just leave me like I am. So our challenge for today is to remember that Jesus wept. And wherever you are, whatever grief and whatever sorrow you have, deny the temptation to deny the glory, and just accept the grief and the sorrow, and understand that you're not alone in this, that Jesus is there with you. He's compassionate. That's why he came. It's Christmas time. Emmanuel, God is with us. And so that's my challenge and exhortation to you, my encouragement to you today. Going a little deep and biblical, because there's no real good, easy answers of, just know that Jesus is sitting there with you, weeping with you, grieving with you, having sorrow with you, and just encourage you not to opt out, not to say, take this away, but to walk through it, to see the glory of God, what God is creating in you and for you. So if you If you want to hear more about Interstellar, it's a great movie. Andrew Winch and I talk about it on the podcast. So check out our full episode. And I hope you join us next time here on Men at the Movies, the YouTube channel.